Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine and a continuation of my New Year's resolutions. Last week it was Chenin Blanc and my pledge in 2017 to drink more of the fantastic Chenin we make in South Africa. This week it is Merlot and the second of my New Year's resolutions. And we make some terrific Merlot. Merlot though, particularly since the movie Sideways came out, has been looked down upon. It's a wine to blend with, nothing to drink on its own. Drink lots of Pinot Noir, not so much Merlot. That was the legacy of Sideways. And it's regarded often at best with a patronising sneer. It's lovely to offset something else in a blend, or at worst, people just don't drink it. Merlot, it's boring, it's got no character, it's not interesting. And that's really unfair, and I think the four Merlots we have today, culminating in a quite sensational wine from Caroline Martin, might just sway your opinion, and hopefully you'll try a few and maybe drink a little more Merlot this year, which is certainly what I'm planning to do. Now the first of the Merlots comes from out in Tulbagh. As you'll know, I'm a fan of wine in Tulbagh, and here's a wine that will suit you if you wear tie-dyed trousers and live on a diet of compost. This is an organic wine for you. It's from Waverley Hills, and they do something that previously not many people had done. They made organic wine, but actually made organic wine that you really liked drinking. Organic wine in the past maybe didn't quite deliver on what you'd expect from wine because the focus is very much on ensuring that it ticked all the organic and environmentally friendly boxes, but Waverley are leading the charge in South Africa in terms of making wine that is both organic and environmentally friendly, and that's a really good thing, but also wine that you really like drinking. Waverley Hills itself, beautiful spot out in Tulbagh, lovely for a wedding or a quiet lunch, but it's the wine we focus on, and it's their Merlot, a simple entry-level Merlot that I think is a quite pleasant way to kick off this week. Catherine Eden, the writer and editor, who also happens to be my aunt, is a huge fan of Merlot for a simple reason. She always tells me how smooth it is, and that really is Merlot. It is a smooth, gentle grape. It's a lovely grape when made well, and I think the four wines today illustrate that. It's also a wine that you can drink just a little bit younger than most. Pinot Noir probably leads that charge, but Merlot doesn't always need quite so long. And so here we have a 2012, it's 5 years old, so it's certainly had a decent amount of time. It's a wine that's organic, so you drink this, you'll be healthier, live longer, and be a more attractive and more rounded person. But I think you'll also be a happier person after a glass of this. I can feel the goodness seeping through me. I'm more Gwyneth Paltrow by the moment. It is very smooth. There are no hard edges, no corners to this wine. It's a lovely drift across the palate. And there's more to it than just that smoothness, because that's why Merlot often gets a bad name. It doesn't stand out from the crowd. This has got just that little bit of pronunciation. There's a nice little bit of fruit, a little bit of zest, a little bit of spice to it. Very muted because it is a Merlot, but it is there. And it makes for a nice, simple, rounded wine, and it's very pleasant indeed. And throw in the organics, and you've got a good start on the Merlot train. On to Veenwouden and their 2012 Merlot Reserve. I first encountered this wine from a guy called Mike. Now, Mike drives large trucks for a living delivering furniture. Perhaps not the person you'd first think of when recommending wine, so I was a little hesitant when accepting his gift of a bottle of Veenwouden, but it turned out to be incredibly pleasant. And I've picked their Merlot because their Merlot's got a pretty good history. They've featured in the past on the Lufthansa first class menu. Jancis Robinson, Robert Parker have given them some very good coverage. And this is their 2012 reserve. So like the last one, it's 5 years old. So whatever smoothness it didn't already have when it was made, it should certainly have found by now. It's an estate that's very small. It's in the Paarl area. Beautiful views, worth a visit for the views alone, but I suspect for their Merlot as well. So the colour is everything you know about Merlot. It's the cherries and the rubies and the kind of words that fall off the tongue when you're talking about red wine, and it can all get a little bit cliched after a while. And I think Merlot suffers from that. It's a much maligned wine when it deserves more than it gets. And this Veenwouden is an example thereof. They like their Merlot. They send a lot of it around the world. They've got a big Chinese market. They've been recognised by people around the world, and I think they're about to be recognised by me with a big smile. So again, debunking the myth that Merlot is just this stream of character-free silk. Yes, it's smooth, but here there's a bit of smoke, there's a bit of earth to it. There's, again, something you can wrap your palate around. It's not just a nondescript piece of smiling wine in the crowd. It's got something more to it, and I really like that about it. The 5 years doesn't hurt, it's just a little bit older. It's developed a touch more character. It's got a little bit of a hint of rust on top of all that cherry and ruby to the colour, and a wine that's got more fullness than you generally give Merlot credit for. And I think that's true of a lot of Merlot, but this in particular. Next up, the Ernie Els Merlot, the 2013. Now, a disclaimer here, I do have a relationship with the Ernie Els group. I do a lot of work with Ernie for his Els for Autism, and I assist them with a lot of the stuff that they do. And I do that very happily because they're a great group. Ernie is a good friend of mine, and the wine that Louis makes down at Ernie Els is by and large exceptional. They're in prime red wine territory, and across the board they make some excellent wine. Obviously the signature, which you would have seen in the very first episode of Dan Really Likes Wine, is the flagship. Their proprietors range is exceptional. And then there's the Ernie Els range. Now it's a little more entry level, just above their Big Easy, but it's still excellent wine. It's excellent value, and it's made with great care, with great expertise, and it's made from a part of the world that really is built for red wine. So this is their Merlot. It's not one that gets as much attention as some of their more high profile wines, but I think it's a lovely wine, and I think it delivers again on what Merlot needs to be celebrated more of. Yes, that smoothness, but it does have a bit more depth of character. I spent some time with Ernie not that long ago at the BMW South African Open, hosting the gala dinner with him and Rory McIlroy and Nick Faldo, and also spent some time with him and Retief Goosen doing an event with TaylorMade, the golf brand that they both represent. And we had a lovely moment because both Retief and Ernie make wine, and I'd offered some wine to Ernie from one of the other golfers, not Retief, one of the other ones, and Ernie's got a very good sense of humour. He's not often given enough credit for that. And I offered him the wine, and he looked back straight away, sharp as could be. He just smiled at me and said, "Dan, I want wine to drink, not wine to cook with." He has a lot of fun with the other golfers, a lot of wine at other people's expense, but he's also someone who's very passionate about wine, knows about the wine, and he's very hands-on with what they make and chats to Louis on a regular basis. And so this is a Merlot that's come out of an estate and come out of people making it who are very passionate about what they do and very focused on what they do. And again, Merlot, not their biggest wine, not their most celebrated, and not a wine that you're going to rush out buy 100 cases of, but it's a really good one to have on hand and a lovely example of Merlot. So again, it's a simple, unaffected wine. There's a little bit of smoke to it. It's a little piquant. I might give that another year or so. Won't hurt it at all. But again, it's just a nice everyday wine, and it's a Merlot that's got a little bit more to it. Nice and smooth, but that touch of character as well. Very, very pleasant. And now for a wine I've been looking forward to drinking for a very long time indeed. Last year when filming for the Dan Nichols show, my show on Supersport, I took a trip out with Bob Skinstad to go and do some shark cage diving. It was terrifying but lots of fun, and afterwards when you do stuff with Bob Skinstad, we all jumped on a helicopter and we flew in here to Creation. Caroline Martin is known not just around South Africa but around the world for being a sorceress when it comes to wine. She really does work wizardry with it. Her wine is celebrated across the board. She makes some lovely Pinot Noir, but it's this that really surprised me when I went out there. We had lunch, we tasted a whole pile of wine, and then this came along. And I'm probably guilty to no small extent of also not giving Merlot its full due, and I think it was this wine that pushed me into the direction of giving it another thought and really making me remember that Merlot does have an enormous amount to offer. And this 2013 Creation Reserve Merlot was absolutely magnificent when I first tried it. It's now slightly older. I suspect it'll be even more so. This is not just a great Merlot, this is one of South Africa's great wines. And that nose says so much about it. It's so pronounced, not in an overwhelming sense, but you really do pick up a depth of character on that nose. and it leads you into knowing that you're going to get something that's really so different. And I'm repeating myself time and again here, but so different to what Merlot is normally written off as. This is a Merlot that needs to be celebrated for being so much more than the wine, the varietal, is normally given credit for. It's big, it's bold, it's full of flavour. This is going to be lovely. There's so many things I love about exploring new wine and exploring different wine, but it's the fact that wine expresses itself in so many different ways that I absolutely love. And here's a wine that on the palate, it's got the smoothness you associate with Merlot, but it's got a little bit of spice, it's got a little bit of fruit, a little bit of zest, a little bit of life to it. It's a beautifully rounded wine. It's a wine that's got so much expression to it, but it's also a wine that, this is 2013, I reckon I'll keep the rest of the case that I have for at least another 3-4 years and then try another one, if I can hold out that long. Caroline Martin, you've done some pretty special stuff in your time, but I'm not sure you've done much better than this. So there we go. This is sensational. The other three, very good indeed. So make that your mission over the next little while. When you're out to dinner, when you're rumbling through your local bottle store, when you're looking for something to drink, pick up a bottle of Merlot, try it, give it another go, and I think you might be pleasantly surprised. Cheers.